He's a liability, a ghost in the machine. The whisper sliced the air like a blade. Julian froze.
Ow.
His gloved hand clenched around the scanner.
Ow.
Plastic grinding against plastic with a faint, sharp squeak that made his nerves tighten. The space around him was freezing. Not a natural cold, but a manufactured one, dry. Sterile, penetrating through layers of protective gear. White-blue leads rained down from the ceiling, carving the polished concrete floor into surgical slices of light. Transport robots glided past, their wheels spinning smoothly, yet ticking faintly, like a clock measuring each beat in a soulless ritual. Julian, or rather Nate, the name he had borrowed to hide who he was, felt every step fall out of rhythm. His safety boots were heavy, dragging his body down like anchors. He remembered the gleam of Italian leather shoes that used to echo across Manhattan boardrooms, footsteps accompanied by laughter, clinking glasses and the flash of cameras. Here, there was none of that. Only the metallic temps in the air, sharp and merciless, as if humanity itself had been stripped away. He drew in a deep breath, the cold stabbing into his lungs. You didn't come here to blend in. You came to see what no financial report will ever tell you. And then he saw him, Samuel Jones. Sam, an older man, quiet, moving as if detached from the frantic rhythm of the younger workers around him. But Julian noticed immediately. Sam wasn't working. He was performing a ritual. He lifted a crate and set it down, not tossed onto the shelf like Marco or Leo would, but with a slow, deliberate gentleness, as though the box contained a living heart. He paused, his gloved finger tracing along the shipping label, stopping exactly on the seam of the seal before moving on. A small gesture, yet it radiated reverence. Julian unconsciously held his breath. In this sterile, frozen warehouse, this man somehow carried warmth, but the warmth was crushed instantly. Devin Thorne, the young supervisor, neat, sharp, clutching his tablet like a counterfeit badge of honor, glanced at Sam with nothing more than a smirk and a subtle shake of the head. The message was clear. This old man is nothing but dead weight. Behind the shelves, Marco and Leo giggled like mockingbirds, mimicking Sam's slight limp, their shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. Their snickers were drowned out by the scanner's steady beeps, but to Julian, they pierced like needles. He swallowed hard, tightening his grip on the scanner. In his mind, magazine covers flashed Forbes, praising Ethelred Logistics as the future of biomedical transport. But now he saw the truth. That future was being built on the mockery of men like Sam, and then disaster struck. Sweat-slick fingers betrayed him, the scanner slipped, a hard plastic edge clipping the corner of a stack of frozen crates. A small clack, but to Julian it rang like a death knell. The entire stack tilted, his blood iced. In an instant he saw it unravel, crates crashing to the floor, frozen material spilling across the ground, alarms blaring, millions lost, a patient somewhere robbed of their chance to live. His pulse thundered, veins pounding in his temples. He lunged forward to stop it. Too late. Another hand was there first. Not rough, not frantic, just one firm, precise push. The stack steadied, trembled for a few seconds, then slowly settled back into balance. Julian exhaled in a rush, chest heaving as though he had just escaped death. He looked up Sam. The older man met his eyes once, without anger, without judgment. Only a single nod, silent, as if to say, "It's fine. Keep going." And he turned back to work, wordless. Julian stood rooted to the spot. Cold wrapped around him, but inside his chest burned hot an ache of gratitude, laced with guilt, heavy as lead. He whispered, "Thanks." Sam didn't turn. The scanners beeped again. Robots glided on. But for Julian, everything else faded into the backdrop. That moment replayed in his mind again and again, like a scene caught in slow motion. The man had just saved him. I'd more than that. He had saved the company from a fracture. A ghost? A liability? No. He was the only one in this frozen tomb still guarding the dignity of humanity. And Julian, the undercover CEO of Ethelred, felt a truth colder than any manufactured wind. He had come here to find cracks. What he touched was not a crack, it was rot, spreading deep into the system's heart. The groundwater was already rising, and soon it would break everything apart. Sam's nod from the night before lingered in Julian's mind. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't forgiveness. It felt like a secret signal, an unspoken message that something larger was unfolding within this warehouse. And Julian was no longer just an observer. He began watching Sam not with Devon's shallow gaze, not with Marco and Leo's mocking smirks, but with the eyes of a man trying to uncover a living secret. Sam had rituals. Before each shift, he wiped his gloves with a worn white rag, meticulous as a surgeon sterilizing instruments. Each time he received a shipment, he read the labels twice, not out of slowness, but out of certainty. The crates he stacked weren't arranged by barcode alone, but by an invisible logic. Weight, stability, perishability. A skill no software could replicate. Julian watched and memorized. The more he observed, the clearer the paradox became. Sam was the embodiment of the precision Ethelred boasted about to the world. Yet to the system, he was nothing but a burden. Julian didn't have to wait long to see how the game was played. During break, he sat in a shadowed corner, pretending to scroll through his phone. The vending machine clinked, a soda can dropped. Then came the familiar voice. Devon, just flag his time punches from 10 to 10:15. I'll correct them later. The corporation only sees the final numbers. Efficiency, boys. The game, Marco snickered. Leo popped a can open. Their laughter rang out in the sterile air like a cruel parody. Julian stiffened, each word cut into him like a blade. This wasn't backroom bullying. This was theft disguised under the very language he himself had fed into the company. Efficiency, optimization, metrics. Words once meant to drive excellence had become weapons in the hands of the malicious. He walked out of the corner, hands trembling. This was the monster he had created, the policies he signed, the reports he praised. Now they were crushing a real human being. That night, in his temporary apartment near the warehouse, Julian opened his laptop. The blue glow lit his face, shards of light refracting in his eyes. He logged into a hidden administrator account access reserved for the CEO alone. Data spilled across the screen. Columns of numbers flickered coldly. Devon, fastest processing. Speed, top efficiency. Marco and Leo, marked improvement. Sam, 0 error rate, no returns in 18 months, no safety incidents. Yet his time per unit column bled red, flagged again and again. Julian leaned back, the screen glaring like a verdict. The truth was undeniable. The system he had built rewarded men like Devon and punished men like Sam. He had created a machine with no soul, and now it was devouring the very best people within it. He didn't sleep. The next morning, Julian stepped into the warehouse, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He saw Sam wiping his gloves with that same white rag. A tiny gesture, but to Julian, it was a declaration, a quiet rebellion against the cold machinery of the system. And by the end of the shift, his suspicions were confirmed. Sam reached for a crate on a high shelf. His work shirt lifted just enough for the LEDs to catch on something glinting at his chest. Dog tags. Julian froze. The cold light swept across stamped steel, letters etched deep, whispering from a distant past. A chill coursed down his spine. This wasn't just an old slow worker. This was a former Marine. A man who had once stood on the front lines, now humiliated in the very company Julian had built. He turned his face away, but the image clung to him like a ghost. The metallic temps in the warehouse became, in his imagination, the scent of blood and gunpowder. In his mind, performance metrics, shattered into fragments, stripped of meaning. That night, Julian didn't go home. He sat in his car staring through the windshield at the warehouse's blue-white glow. Those dog tags burned in his memory, a tolling bell he couldn't silence. Sam, the man the system labeled a liability, was in truth carrying legacy, honor, and standard. And Julian knew, if he stayed silent, he wouldn't just be betraying Sam, he would be betraying himself. The water had already risen to his chest. He could feel it soon. The dam would break. The emergency shipment arrived on a gray afternoon. The truck screeched into the lot, brakes burning, leaving the acrid stench of scorched rubber in the air. The container door swung open, revealing crates of stem cell samples worth millions. The seals were sloppy, the dry ice melting, white vapor hissing out in slow streams. Devon appeared instantly, tablet in hand, eyes sharp as a hawk. If this gets delayed, tomorrow's schedule collapses. Who's taking responsibility? The group fell silent. Marco and Leo exchanged glances, waiting for orders. Julian, still disguised as Nate, stood back, his gut twisted in knots. Only Sam stepped forward. He didn't speak, didn't wait for permission. He simply picked up the first crate, wiped his gloves with the familiar white rag, and began resorting. Slow, steady movements, opening, inspecting, reinforcing insulation, replacing the dry ice, resealing labels. Devon folded his arms, voice dripping with disdain. Trying to be a hero, Grandpa? Sam said nothing. His calloused, aging hands moved with the precision of someone disassembling a rifle. Julian's grip on the scanner tightened, nails biting into the plastic. Don't do this too. Him? Marco pulled up the electric lift, feigning clumsiness. Julian caught the subtle flick of his wrist, a deliberate move. The steel forks nudged the crate Sam was working on. A small shove disguised as an accident, but sharp enough to fracture. The sealed beep, beep, beep. The internal temperature sensors screamed, red lights flashing. The alarm tore through the warehouse. Devon lunged in, face lit with the satisfaction of a man who had been waiting for this moment. Are you serious, Sam? That's a potential $1 million loss. Maybe your hands aren't so steady anymore. Maybe it's time you hang it up before you really hurt someone, or something. The air froze. Marco feigned concern, and Leo bit his lip to hide a grin. Around them, the workers stopped, eyes locked on Sam as though watching a trial. Sam knelt. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He opened the emergency isolation kit and began working. Each movement slow, meticulous, dignified. Sweat beaded across his forehead, glinting under the cold LEDs. His silence weighed heavily than any outburst could.
Oh.
Julian's throat closed. In that bowed figure, Sam was not diminished. He towered above everyone in the warehouse. Devon, for all. His smug triumph looked small and petty. The shift ended. People dispersed. But Julian couldn't leave. He followed Sam quietly, keeping his distance. Sam didn't head toward the employee lot. He veered into the dark back lane, where only dumpsters and flickering amber lights stood guard. There, parked against the shadows, was an old Ford F-150, paint peeling, rust eating its edges. Sam opened the back door. Julian's breath caught. Inside wasn't work gear, it was a silver thermal blanket, a couple of worn pillows, and a canvas duffel. Julian went still. Samuel Jones, the most careful, most honorable man in his company, was living out of that battered truck. His heart pounded. Sam hadn't just been robbed of his wages. He'd been robbed of his dignity. Of his home, Sam slid into the driver's seat, leaned back and closed his eyes. The yellow light spilled through the windshield, etching the lines of his weathered face, every crease carved by years of burden. And in that moment, Julian saw absolute exhaustion, absolute solitude. Julian sat only meters away in his sleek Audi A8. The silent engine purred like a proud metal beast. Just a few steps separated the two vehicles, yet between their lives stretched an abyss no number could measure. His hands clenched the wheel, chest heaving. He wanted to get out, to say something, but his legs wouldn't move. He could only sit behind tinted glass, helpless, while part of his soul dissolved. And in that moment, Julian knew the dam had broken. He was no longer Nate. He was Julian Croftant. He had just led a Marine, a man who once risked his life for the nation, sleep in a rusted truck under the shadow of the company he had built to glorify integrity. He shut his eyes, hands trembling. Question hammered in his skull like a gavel. What kind of CEO have I become? The waters had overflowed. And Julian knew. Tomorrow, everything would change. 3A.M. New York slept. But in the high-rise penthouse, the glow of 6, monitors cast Julian Croft's face in cold metallic blue. He hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. On the desk, a glass of untouched whiskey stood beside neatly stacked financial papers. Forbes covers staring back at him with his own smiling face. Mocking. The man who had built the empire of biomedical logistics. To Julian now, it was nothing more than a lie printed on glossy paper. He had shed Nate's skin the moment he left the warehouse. There was no room now for the clumsy worker disguise. Only Julian Croft remained founder, CEO, and a man seething with fury. On screen, the slow-motion feed from security cameras played. He scrubbed through frames, zooming in. The steel forks. Of the lift, Marco's wrist flick. The precise moment the crate was nudged. A second angle, a third. No room for accident. It was deliberate sabotage. Julian jotted notes, detached, his hand trembling, even as his voice on the phone cut sharp as steel. Jessica, get legal on the line now. He didn't wait for a reply. I want every single log Devin Thorne has adjusted in the past 6 months. Raw data. No summaries. And send me the full personnel file for Samuel Jones. I don't care what time it is. Straight to my encrypted server. Jessica, his long-serving secretary, stammered. He cut her off. Do it. His eyes drifted to a framed photo on the desk. His father in uniform, hand resting on the shoulder of a 20-year-old Julian. His father's voice echoed in memory. How you treat the janitor will tell the world who you really are. Julian ground his teeth. He had failed. A ping cut through the silence. A PDF opened. Sam's file. Samuel Jones, U.S. Marine Corps, Force Reconnaissance. 1908-2005. Silver Star, Purple Heart. Note: spinal injury sustained in duty. Wife, deceased. Cancer, 2018. Children, none. Address: P.O. Box, no fixed residence. Julian leaned back, covering his face with a hand. Every line was a blade. The man Devin mocked as a burden had once survived battlefields and risked his life for honor. And now he slept in a rusted truck, drained by the very system Ethelred had built. He turned back to the data. Numbers danced, Devin's productivity soaring, Marco and Leo consistently improving. Sam, flawless record, 0 accidents. 0 returns, yet flagged red across the board for being too slow. Julian enlarged the charts. Devin's spikes of performance lined up exactly with minor incidents logged. At the same time, Sam's hours were cut, adjusted, and buried. A perfect loop. Sabotage, correction, credit stolen. A system feeding on integrity to let parasites climb. He inhaled sharply, chest rising and falling. On the 6th screen, the camera feed from last night flickered, Sam stepping into the dark lane. Pulling a thermal blanket from the back of his battered truck. Grainy pixels, a halo of amber streetlight glinting against silver hair. Julian's fist clenched. Not another day. Dawn crept through the glass. First light spilled across the penthouse. Julian rose, his chair rolling back. He strode to the wardrobe. Not the Tom Ford suit, no silk tie. He pulled out a worn flannel shirt and slipped it on. Grabbed a faded baseball cap, still stained with engine grease. He set the Audi keys aside and picked up the keys to a truck. No boardroom calls, no polished emails, no waiting for reports today. He would end this himself, staring into the mirror. The reflection was no longer the glossy CEO Forbes had crowned. It was a face set hard, eyes bloodshot but burning clear. A man ready to enter the battlefield. Julian whispered, a vow etched in steel. No one gets left behind. He opened the door and stepped into the newborn light. The city below roared awake, traffic flowing like rivers of steel. But inside, Julian Croft, only one mission remained: reclaim the soul of his company. And justice for Samuel Jones. The storm was coming, and he was the eye of it. Mid-shift, the warehouse doors swung open. A gust of cold wind rushed in, carrying the weight of steady, deliberate footsteps. Julian Croft walked through, Gone was Nate's meek shuffle. Every stride cut through the sterile air, pulling every gaze toward him. Devon arched a brow, smirk curling. "Hey, Nate, you're late." "What's the but?" Julian didn't stop. His voice rolled out, low but resonant, like a bell tolling. "Everyone, conference room B now." For a moment, no one moved. Then, as though pressed down by an invisible weight, they followed in silence. The conference room was stark white, LEDs casting an icy glow. The group crowded in, uneasy. Julian moved to the head of the table, removed his worn baseball cap, and set it down. "My name is Julian Croft," he said, head raised, eyes sweeping the room. "I own this company." Silence crashed down. Marco gaped, Leo blanched, hands wringing. Devon stood rigid, jaw slack as if struck. Only Sam in the corner remained. Calm, his eyes carried no shock, no doubt, just quiet recognition. He nodded. Not in submission, but in affirmation. "I knew." Julian opened his laptop, casting footage onto the large screen. First angle, Marco steering the lift, nudging the crate. Second, the twist of his wrist. Third, the fractured seal. The alarm blared in the recording. Julian turned, voice sharp. "As glass, you falsified incidents to sabotage a fellow employee." Sweat broke across their brows. He shifted his gaze to Devon. "You systematically altered time logs. Stealing wages from a man under your supervision, you cultivated a culture of toxicity and disrespect. You are a disgrace to the title of leader." Devon's mouth opened, ready to argue, but Julian cut him off. "Don't. I have the raw data. Every adjustment, every theft. It's over." The room thickened. Every eye pinned on Devon, Marco, and Leo Small, trembling now. Julian turned toward Sam. The rest of the room blurred away. "I pulled your file, Sam. Force reconnaissance." He let the words ring. "Force recon doesn't leave people behind. They operate with honor. And last night I saw that same honor. When you knelt on that cold floor, humiliated but still doing your job right." From his pocket, Julian drew a weathered challenge coin, placing it in Sam's hand. "Thank you for your service. Then and now." The room fell into stillness. Sam looked down at the coin, his aged eyes flickering with quiet emotion. He didn't speak, but his shoulders squared, seeming broader than before. Julian's tone turned razor-sharp once more. "Devon, Marco, Leo, you are terminated, effective. Immediately, security will escort you out. Full investigation into wage theft begins today." Devon paled. Marco and Leo whispered desperate pleas. Julian didn't spare them another glance. He faced Sam again, his voice softening. "Sam, I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Integrity. Your job is to teach every new employee what you taught me, that character is more important than speed." From his jacket, Julian drew an envelope and placed it in Sam's hand. "Inside, your new contract and keys. Way to a furnished corporate apartment, 2 blocks from here. It's yours.
Active immediately, watch.
Your watch is over, Marine.
Welcome.
Home." Sam stared at the key resting in his calloused palm. His lips trembled not into a smile, but into the faintest crack in the wall of hardship he'd worn for years. He looked up, locking eyes with Julian. Slowly, firmly, he nodded. A solemn nod, resolute. Julian nodded back. No words needed. The sterile room seemed to be warming, not from the lights, but from something deeper. The standard had been reset. In that cold warehouse, an old burden mocked, humiliated, nearly crushed by the very system he served, rose again. With nothing but a silent nod, he had shaken the soul of a CEO. Pulling him out of hollow numbers and forcing him to reclaim the company's humanity, this story isn't only about Julian Croft and Samuel Jones. It is a reminder for all of us. In a world obsessed with speed and efficiency, human character is the only standard that cannot be compromised. Sam never had to speak a word. He taught with action, with integrity, with honor upheld even under humiliation. The standard was restored not only in one company, but in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. And you. Have you ever seen someone dismissed, treated as invisible, simply because they were older, slower, or different? And did you stay silent? Or did you speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Talk's story so we can spread more tales of integrity, dignity, and the strength of the human spirit. Because sometimes a single silent nod is enough to change the world.